Good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. This is BRN Sunday for Sunday, May 12th, 2024. We've got another great show for you this week. In the first segment, Kevin Walsh of Groom Law Group, one half of the Legal Eagles, will be here, and we'll be discussing health savings accounts and do they fall under the new Financial Retirement Security Rule, or better known as the new Fiduciary Rule. And then in the second segment, we take a look back at a show earlier in the week with Jen Sidorova of the Reason Foundation around pensions versus pay. So sit back, relax, enjoy this episode of BRN Sunday. Time to kick off the show with a look at what is happening around Capitol Hill. Here to help break it all down, he is one half of the famed Legal Eagles. Kevin Walsh is a principal with Groom Law Group. That's an employee benefits law firm based in Washington, D.C. Kevin, so great to have you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Jeff, thanks for having me on. It's always good to talk to your listeners.
Our listeners, because you're part of the network. Okay, Kevin, I think this is an interesting conversation, and one that probably a lot of individuals probably didn't think about when they think about the fiduciary rule. Health savings accounts and how they fit in.
Yeah, so I mean, for folks out there, you've got kind of a variety of tax advantage ways that you can, pay for health expenses. You've got flexible spending accounts where you get money that you can use or lose every year. You've got other vehicles, but you also have these things called health savings accounts where, you can contribute money, your employer can contribute money during a year. But if that balance gets above a certain amount, you can also invest that money and save it for bigger health expenses that are down the line or retirement medical expenses. Mm-hmm. And, historically, health savings accounts, while they are, tax retirement type plans, tax plans, so they offer big tax advantages, they have not been subject to the, fiduciary provisions of ERISA. And as part of the fiduciary rule, they've redefined what it means to be a retirement investor to include things like HSAs to the extent they have an investment component. So, this represents kind of a sea change in terms of HSA administration. So like if you're a plan sponsor, this isn't going to necessarily make you a fiduciary with respect to the decision to offer an HSA. But if you're an HSA provider and you offer, a set lineup of investments, or you're a plan sponsor and you offer a number of specific investments inside that HSA, then under this new rule, you may now have ERISA's fiduciary provisions creep into the world of HSAs. Ultimately, this means you may end up in that house where you need to have exemptions to comply if you're going to get fees. It may mean that there's a greater duty to monitor for fees, a greater duty to monitor, the prudence of the investment lineup that's offered. And this could have a significant impact on the HSA marketplace. Now, before I pivot, do you have anything else you want to talk about the HSAs, or should I talk about, health insurance policies more broadly and the fiduciary rule?
Well, I did have a question, and I want to ask you, because you and David are involved in a lot of these conversations. How do HSAs, are there committees set up that would evaluate funds and all the things that we do on the retirement side? I mean, is that the case, or does the retirement committee usually have oversight of the HSA?
So, generally you don't see a lot of, the retirement committees aren't looking at the HSAs. What you tend to see is that if you're an employer and you offer an HSA, the HSA is kind of a bundled package with your health insurance provider. And the HSA comes with its own, here is what your investment lineup is going to look like. Here is kind of what the world is going to be. And it's kind of a take it or leave it package. And it's not, I suspect that as if fiduciary takes effect, as these things come online, we may see the world begin to evolve away from that into one where, there might be, more variation among different HSA providers and the investment options you see inside of an HSA.
Okay. Thank you for that, Kevin. And I know you wanted to continue the conversation around health benefits, I think, in general.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just interesting when you see the Department of Labor talk about health benefits in a fiduciary context. And kind of the key here is that, folks ask in the comment period, are things like health, disability, term life, are those investment property for purposes of, fiduciary. And the Department of Labor, without offering a lot of clarity, said, you know, to the extent those types of policies lack an investment component, then they're not considered investment property for purposes of this new fiduciary rule. Now, what constitutes investment property is kind of a murky area. So we're going to have to see, as you look at, different types of policies and, do they make adjustments as you get older? Do they make adjustments based on the market? Are there things that can vary based on, outside events? And I think we're going to need to see some more guidance and just see how that evolves in courts before we can comfortably say, this policy's in, that policy's out.
Kevin, I think many on this, listening to this program, I would be very surprised. I was surprised to hear that HSAs would be covered by this new fiduciary rule. Are there other areas that maybe, for example, I don't know. Are there other areas, non-retirement, non-HSA related, that maybe unexpectedly might fall under the guidelines of this rule?
I mean, I would think things like Coverdell education savings accounts, Archer medical savings accounts could be swept in. The Department of Labor provided some clarity. They said, don't worry if you're a real estate agent. We're not trying to sweep you in. But I do think when we look at tax advantage dollars around the edges, it's going to be important to take a close look to see what's in and what's out.
And what about, to that effect, you mentioned Coverdell. I was thinking about 529. And a lot of times there are advisor sold 529 programs.
So I'd have to take a closer look at that. I don't think they're incorporated in this, but I'd want to take a closer look. I don't think those are employer sponsored, but we're getting a little bit out of my wheelhouse.
Okay, no worries. All right, this was great, Kevin. We really appreciate you coming on the program. I guess last question, in terms of litigation, any news on that front in terms of the rule? I know that when we last spoke, there was, I think, an insurance company or representative organization that was challenging the rule. Any other lawsuits pop up, or any others expected to pop up in the next?
I think we expect additional suits in the coming weeks. But for now, we've got just the Federation of Americans for Consumer Choice lawsuit down in Texas. We're continuing to watch that, but courts aren't always the quickest things, and the Department of Labor's response is still a few weeks away.
Yeah. Well, Kevin, we're going to have to leave it there. Great to talk to you. Thanks so much for joining us. Great insight, because I hadn't even thought about that. I only had thought about retirement. Maybe that's because I'm reading the Retirement Press. Great to talk to you. Thanks so much for joining us, and I look forward to having you back on the program again very soon.
Thanks for having me on, Jeff, and thank you, listeners.
Thanks, Kevin. Have a great weekend.
You too.
Bye.
Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms? Especially for the smaller businesses. I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Welcome back, and now we're going to look back at a show from Monday of BRN AM. Jen Sidorova of the Reason Foundation joined us to discuss whether it's pensions or pay that incentivizes individuals to work for the public sector. So let's give that one a listen. And joining me now to discuss this and a lot more is Jen Sidorova of Reason Foundation. Jen, so great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Good to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
It is, and I want to start with just some a basic question. And it seems like states are trying to attract new workers, police, firefighters, emergency personnel. How important is compensation or just pay versus the traditional defined benefit pension plan, which which is traditionally offered, pun intended, as a retirement benefit for a lot of these individuals?
So I do academic research as part of Pension Integrity Project at Reason, and I also do it as part of Georgia Tech. As part of that research that I found, the literature review that I did, I found that according to the surveys, especially a few surveys recently conducted by the Mission Square Institute, they show that workers do not necessarily put pensions as a top priority when they make decisions about either joining workforce or staying in the workforce. And they much rather see higher salaries, maybe better health insurance, better maternal leave, better benefits like this, better work-life balance. That has been a trend ever since the past 5 years or so. Work-life balance has really been showing up for a lot of workers. And that's true not just for the public sector workers, but all across the nation. And even if there's a need to recruit more workers to the public sector force, it should be made a priority. You know, these high compensation, work-life balance, health insurance, maternal leave, other benefits should be made a priority if we want to recruit people from the private sector to the public sector force.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I didn't mean to cut off your closing statement. Did that surprise you at all, that when you looked at the data, that these other things are more of a priority? Because traditionally, and I come from the retirement industry, traditionally everyone points to it's the DB plan. But a lot of these workers today, my understanding is they don't stay and work at the government entity for 30, 35 years like they used to do it back when I first was coming out of college and into the workforce.
Yeah, definitely. I think it is very clear that the trend, especially among young workers, has changed, right? So it has been coming for about 10 to 15 years now too. It's been more and more evident. It is that we see it in the public sector. We see retention and recruitment. We just see a lack, almost like not enough workforce in the public sector, because with time this trend has realized in the public sector workforce just now. I think there's two important trends to see here. First of all is that two important trends to kind of highlight. First of all is that indeed Gen Z and millennials are not staying on job as long, and just satisfaction with their work and being excited about their work, making a difference. These are a lot more important to them than anything else. Now, salary is still important, obviously, but what is different between salary and pensions is compensation right now versus deferred compensation. And pensions and even retirement benefits are deferred compensation. And frequently, workers are we just don't see that they are willing to sacrifice the pay right now for being paid sometime in the future in the form of defined benefit payout. So that's one trend, is just they're not staying as long. And then the second one is that realistically, and this has been, I've seen it in my literature review, is that workers are frequently not informed about the level of the benefits that they have. They sometimes know that they do have a pension, but they frequently cannot put themselves into the correct pension plan if they're given options. And there's just lack of knowledge and awareness of how good those benefits can be, or sometimes I've seen anecdotal stories from workers who just would forget to opt in into a pension plan, and they would just go years without even knowing that they're not. And there's all those sorts of nuances about, we really have to do in public sector, we really have to do a better job educating workers about the kind of benefits that they have. So two things, again, it's just the Gen Z and millennials are not staying in the workplace as long, and the fact that our workers are not quite as knowledgeable as we wish they were about the pension benefits. And those trends that's what puts pension benefits just low in the priority list for workers, and especially young workers.
And Jen, one last question before we go to a commercial break. So, what's the lesson here for state legislators who typically have oversight? So there's always, a committee that has oversight of the plan and its investments, but state legislatures typically take up the pension issue during the typical state legislature sessions. What's the message here for them when it comes to hiring that police officer, that firefighter, emergency personnel, or even administrative staff?
Well, I think the most prevalent trend that we see right now is that there's a kind of a push for pension enhancement or switching back from defined benefit to defined contribution plan. All those trends that governments are trying to hastily put together some sort of pension enhancement, a pension reform. They're really misguided because, first of all, and it's some of them are, like in New York, we have a pension enhancement that's being pushed, and it only is switching the defined benefit formula from 5 years to 5 years highest salary to 3-year highest salary. It's a very nuanced. It's like, I don't think anybody, as a teacher or as a public sector workers, you're not going to make a decision about staying in the workforce or joining the workforce, the public sector workforce, based on such minute change. But it adds like $4 billion in pension debt to the state of New York. So things like this, the government should really analyze how much benefit are they getting from enhancing pensions, if they consider that, versus how much more are they going into debt. Because ultimately, as we talked prior, that's not what the public sector workers necessarily need. Probably putting more effort into enhancing their non-traditional benefits like health insurance, maternal leave, work-life balance, and salaries is a better this is where they should put their energy into, instead of trying to kind of go back in time, going back to traditional benefits, going back to what we had before, and we know that doesn't work anymore.
Well, that's certainly an interesting conversation, and one I think many state legislatures will continue to have. What's going to incentivize people in today's workforce to work for the public sector, which is, I think, a wonderful job. More to come on that. And that wraps up this episode of BRN Sunday. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to? Then drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the latest curated news and lifestyle, wellness, finance, tech, so much more, and all in one place, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Want to search our archives, check out our latest content? Then visit our website. We're back again tomorrow with another edition of BRN AM with a very special guest and another important topic. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.